Hi, I'm Nigel Marsh, and this is the 5 of My Life podcast, the show where 5 choices reveal sideways insights into the lives, opinions, and lessons of interesting people. So, Felicity Copeland, welcome to 5 of My Life.
Thanks, Nigel. Thanks for asking me.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you on. Now, is it true you've been a midwife for 20 years?
It's funny when you asked me that and I said 20 years, I think, gosh, it just seems so much longer, Nigel. I feel like I've been a midwife forever. I don't imagine my life without midwifery in it. So it's only 20 years, but it took me a long time to become a midwife. I had to do nursing first, and I had to do that part-time because I had kids. So that was like 9 years to become a midwife. So I guess, it's really 30 years. So it's been very good to me, midwifery.
I'm pleased to hear that, because the point of this project is for midwives and nurses to get to know other midwives and nurses that they wouldn't bump into in their place of work, because they might be living in a completely different part of the country. And it's lovely to hear so far people saying, realistically, with all the challenges, but it's just a sensational profession that has got huge variety.
Yeah, it is. And I think I've been kind of unusual and very lucky in a way to have experienced a very diverse sort of components of midwifery. So I started off working clinically. I worked clinically for a long time across all areas, and mainly in a continuity of care model, which was, very rewarding because you really get to know women and families. And then I sort of got into research, did a research degree, and ended up sort of in international development work, which is what I'm doing now, which is sort of fascinating, very stimulating, very challenging, but really rewarding.
So international development work, does that mean that you have to go to other countries? Yeah,
so a lot of travel. I mean, COVID was interesting, and we learnt to live on Zoom, as we all did. But yeah, so my partner and I lived in Fiji for a few years, and this is a little while ago. And in Fiji, there's a UNFPA sub-regional office in Suva, and UNFPA is the reproductive and maternal health arm of the UN. So I was volunteering in a local hospital, and then I don't know, just sort of, one of those sliding door moments, you meet people. And then I started working for UNFPA, and UNFPA have about 120 offices across the world, mainly in low resource settings. So I ended up doing some amazing work, traveling to lots of tiny countries in the Pacific, countries I'd never heard of, to collect data around maternal experience, where women were struggling in their pregnancy, where women were dying, where babies were dying, where is the support needed. So all that data, I mean, countries like Niue, which, have you heard of Niue, Nigel?
I mean, I've heard of it, but I'll be hard pushed to tell you anything about it.
Yeah, well, I didn't even know. I'd never heard of it. So 1,200 people who live in this country. So it was sort of fascinating. So that was a really eye-opening experience for me, and I've sort of continued that work. So yeah, we do travel to lots of countries and help support midwifery education or clinical programs, a whole range, whatever country needs.
It's so heartening for me. I mean, I've got 4 kids. One of my daughters is a nurse, and I'm saying to her with fatherly love, hoping it's true, that there is a world of opportunity out there for you, sweetheart, as a nurse, and your stories are backing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. Come on, I'm going to talk her into doing midwifery.
Do you know what? I think actually you might succeed, because she's expressed an interest. But it's not about my kids. It's about your 5 choices. And we always start with the film. And we're going to 2019, where you have chosen The Gentleman, dear old Guy Ritchie doing his thing. Tell us why you've chosen that.
Well, it was a fun experience when you asked us to choose these 5 things. This was quite a hard choice. And in fact, full transparency, it's certainly not my favourite film, but it is a film that I just have such a warm and fuzzy feeling around, even though it's not at all a warm and fuzzy film. It's because our dearest younger son invited us to come and watch it with him, to see it. And we'd been living overseas, and just to spend time with him was gold. And I am notoriously difficult to choose films to go and see with, because I can't bear tension, I can't bear violence, I don't want too much sex, I don't want any women hurt or children hurt. So it's really...
The Gentleman's got all of that.
I know. Exactly. I know. And if I chose, I'd probably choose Bambi or something. But to be with him was such a treat. And I just remember this experience of sitting there with, suitcase size of popcorn and choc tops, and just sitting next to him and just wanting to be with him, and really awash with maternal love, I guess. And so at the end of the film, he said, "Oh, what did you think, Mum?" And it's like, so who were the guys in the hats? Like, why were they killing each other? I had no idea what had happened. And so we had to go a year later. He said, "Mum, come on, we have to see it again." And in fact, it is a wonderful film. It is all of those things that you said, and very well done and great acting. And, you know, the British do that sort of stuff very well. Even though it was violent, it was kind of funny, which is weird.
I love you describing enjoying an event that you're not enjoying for the main reason. You're enjoying because... So I this morning, I mean, I cannot tell you how cold it is. I did an ocean swim in Gordon's Bay, you know, in my sluggos. I mean, I literally thought I was going to die. My hands were white, my lips were blue. And it's an ocean swim that happens every week, and most people do it with a wetsuit, but I don't own a wetsuit. Anyway, but a bit like your gentleman experience, if you were to say to me, how did you enjoy, it's called Krusties, how did you enjoy Krusties this morning? I would say it was one of the nicest events of my entire life. And you go, but why would that be? And you go, well, because I did it with Harry, Harry's one of my children, did it with my younger son. And you go, I mean, I wouldn't have minded if I was watching the gentleman playing golf or swimming Gordon's Bay. I'm there for the byproduct, which is, you know, paternal love. So tell me about that son. What country had he been living in?
Oh, no, we'd been living away. We left him. That was the thing. We had, when he was 18, we said, "See ya," and off we went. So to have your 20-year-old actually want to spend time with you was pretty special.
Oh, that's just lovely. So you were and you were back in Australia, and he took you to the gentleman.
Yeah.
And forever and a day.
I will love Guy Ritchie, but I coincidentally, Nigel, I'm just going to tell you this. Just recently, we were in Japan with our other two sons who live there, and Fred said, "Oh, Mum, you have to watch The Gentleman." But in fact, he was talking about there's a new series. Have you seen it? Guy Ritchie's created a series.
No, I've heard it's like #1 on Netflix or something.
Yes. So I said, "Oh, I love Guy Ritchie." And so there I was in that experience again, sitting in Japan with two of my other sons watching this whole series, you know, drinking sake and eating funny Japanese snacks and really loving that experience of just doing something together. So I am a huge fan of Guy Ritchie.
I think of that film a bit like when I saw Pulp Fiction for the first time, or Lock, Stock and Smoking Barrel, Two Smoking Barrel. You go, it's sort of for the 2 hours, it was a bit like Indiana Jones, the very first one. You sort of think it's a great cinema-going experience. It doesn't bear for me, you know, sitting down and analysing 2 weeks later, because you go, well, hold on, it's, you know, borderline racist, misogynist, violent, you know, glorifying criminality, blah, blah, blah. But as you say, with a bucket of popcorn and your son next to you, it's a bloody good night out.
It was fun. And he does it well. He's got high production values. And Colin Farrell, I mean, my God, he's hilarious.
Well, him and Hugh Grant. I think that those two in that film were just a revelation. But we're going back a decade. We're going back 10 years to a book called A Happy Marriage by a bloke whose name I won't be able to pronounce, Rafael Iglesias.
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah, there you go. Tell us why you chose that. Or what if I sort of describe it a little bit and then tell us why you chose it on Five of My Life.
Okay. Well, that was the easiest choice, Nigel. And when you asked me to send it to you, I went to the post office because it's called A Happy Marriage, right? And there's a very cranky pants postmaster down here. And he said, "What's this?" And he said, I said, "Oh, it's a book called Happy Marriage." And he said, "Oh, you know, should have read that 45 years ago. It might have saved me a bit of grief." And I tried to explain to him, it does sound a bit like a counselling book, doesn't it? But it's not. It's a novel, but obviously it's quite autobiographical. And when I sent it to you, I thought, if Nigel Marsh does not love this book, I am not going on his program. So I was very relieved or very pleased because I absolutely love it. It is, to me, an extraordinary book that is intimate, profound, brave, deeply frustrating, deeply revealing. I mean, I'm sort of keen to talk about it with you because I know you liked it.
It's one of the best books I think I've read. And I'm very grateful.
Oh.
Yeah, well, because I'm not boasting. It's just part of my job. I read every guest's books. I've read a lot of books. It really is. And I'm very grateful that you chose it. I have to go back to the postman quickly. I love postmen who are inappropriately intimate. So in England, we'd have her in the village who would hand you a postcard and comment on the contents. Oh, so is Margaret still abroad? And you go, what?
That's right, yeah.
He's reading your postcard.
I've had to change pharmacists for that reason. You know, you're standing there and say, oh, you should meet, Mrs. Brown. She's on, all sorts of medications that you are. Thank you very much. The book, Nigel. Look, I'm so glad you loved it. It's what I love about it, and without, I suppose, I'm not revealing too much because it all is obvious within the first sort of chapter, but it's that sort of extraordinary unpicking of an enduring marriage and this relationship that has spanned this long time, 35 years, written through the eyes of the husband. And to be fair, I'm not drawn to male authors particularly. I read a lot of female authors, and I was in a bookshop in New York, and it just one of those beautiful, 3-story bookshops that you're there all day. And I allowed myself to buy one book, and I came out with that book, and I came out with it because of the cover. I thought it was the most beautiful, gentle illustration of a tree that just, to me, represented a long marriage, because it was broad and shady and protective and gnarly and rich and had survived, I guess. And reading this sort of the way he looks back at his marriage, and each chapter is broken up between the past and the present. And in the present, obviously, his wife is dying. I particularly love those chapters, Nigel, the way he wrote about caring for her with such love and respect, because in some of the other earlier chapters, he was a bit of a dick, wasn't he?
God, there's so much, there's so many thoughts. And because it was your personal copy, I did what I normally do when I buy someone's choice, is I dog-ear the pages and I write in pencil where I've dog-eared. But obviously for your copy, I wouldn't dream of doing that. So I've written lots of notes on...
Send it back, by the way.
Yeah, no worries, I will. It was a really... I'm slightly conflicted because I really, really, really enjoyed reading it. And it stayed with me, and I love the split narrative of the start of the courtship and her. It's not giving it away, her dying. I love the honesty with which it was written, and there's some incredible descriptions, especially of him wanting to spend, time alone with his wife in her final 8 days, and everyone, you could just see from everyone's different point of view. It just, oh, bloody hell, I want to spend some time with my wife, but oh God, my friend who's not really my friend has booked in that hour. Oh, yeah. But the reason I'm conflicted is I deeply disliked him, which makes me like him as an author all the more. It's deeply autobiographical. He might as well have just said "my life" on the front cover, and it's quite a. I've researched him as well as read the book,
yes.
and I am pleased that he is as honest at revealing his real thoughts, because then it makes it not a bullshit book. But if you were to ask me, which isn't the point, I love books when I don't have to like the people in them to love the book, if that makes sense. It's like I don't know if you ever watched Succession, the TV series. It's full of that everyone in it is revolting.
Yes.
But I really enjoyed everything about it. The context, the moral, the personalities, they are all disgusting. Yet it's gripping TV. And you go, well, how can that be? So it wasn't that bad. But I look at him, and I was actually, when I was finishing it, I was on holiday with my wife and a friend. And I was boring Kate and Nicola with this amazing book I'm reading. And oh my God, I was terrified that he was going to tell her on her deathbed to make himself feel better that he'd had an affair with her best friend. I'm going, is there no limit to your narcissistic, self-centered, whining, overprivileged? I just, and the whole thing is funded by coming from a rich family. Where it's sort of pretend poverty. Anyway, so sorry, it's not about what I think about it. But you asked me, I just loved it, but not. I felt really sorry for her.
Yeah, he definitely was a dick and he behaved badly. But like you said, I love the fact that he sort of fell on his sword and declared all that. And what made it up for me was just his observations about about their relationship and why it had endured, and this incredible interest they had in each other and the conversations and the way he cared for her. I particularly loved, maybe it's the clinician in me, I don't know, but the way he described her body as she was dying, and him, toileting her and changing the tubes and the unblocking all the hot dogs that she'd eaten through the peg tube in her stomach, and her body sort of disintegrating. But he wrote about that with such deep love and respect, as if her body was still beautiful to him. I just thought it was so tender and poignant. I forgave a lot of his dickish behaviour, I have to say.
Yes, so I think there's something, I think it was Joni Mitchell said, where if you want endless repetition, go out with lots of different people. If you want infinite variety, stay with one. And you go, wow. Because if you go out with lots of different people, you tell, I just pretend you have 100 first dates. Well, you're telling your best stories, doing your best, glamming yourself up, blah, blah, blah. And you're not growing or learning. So I would give him a free pass. I mean, the poor bastard doesn't care what I think of him, but I would give him a free pass if you were to judge him as a man at the end. You go, he's turned into a decent man who deeply loves his wife, who I believe in the last 5 years of her life, if Trixie Slacknickers was batting her eyelids at him, saying, come over here and have lots of sex behind your wife's back, he would say no, because that would be disrespectful to my wife. He'd grown as a man, if that makes sense. And there's something, my father-in-law, God love him, gave a speech on his 50th wedding anniversary, which I was lucky enough to be at. And he said, marriage isn't a sprint. And you think, oh God, here we go. He's going to say it's a marathon. and he goes, it's not a marathon either.
Oh,
and you go,
God.
oh, okay, interesting. You go, it's a steeplechase.
Oh, I like
And you
that.
go, wow, I really like that. And for me, I mean, I'm a bit of an arch. I mean, I don't care what other people do. I just want everyone to be happy. They can do what they want. But I'm a bit of a traditionalist, which I'm a fan of people staying together. I know it's trendy to have 10 marriages and, give up at the first sign of any boredom or anything.
That's way too hard.
I like it when people stay together, because I think that the only thing that full disclosure, I've been married for 32 years. The only thing that's sort of unique about us is our shared memories. And we've, that no one else has lived the life that my wife and I have lived. How long have you, it's Pete you're married to, isn't it?
It's, yeah. Oh gosh. Full disclosure, we're not actually married. I'm still waiting for him.
Well, you know what I mean. Living as partners.
40. Well, Max is 35. Yeah, 40 years. Yeah, so it's great. And for me, it just gets richer and better and more interesting. I mean, there are parts of that book that I related to. Those, Groundhog Day when you've got little kids, and there are bits that ebb and flow of a marriage, but for me, it's enduring and it's about history, as you say, and about connection with these little people that you've grown together, and watch evolve into, three superb human beings. We get so much joy from that together.
There was some amazing passages in it where he was writing about looking back on his life and his marriage, which really resonated with me as well. In those, life is so busy, but now, my kids have left home, and I know your kids are of a certain age where you can get a bit of space where you can think, blimey, we did all that, gosh. And I think you've got grandkids, haven't you?
Yes. Oh, don't get me started.
Well, I'm going to move you on, but thank you for that book. I thoroughly recommend it to everybody. A Happy Marriage by Rafael Iglesias. We're moving to the song, and holy moly, you have chosen a song from actually one of my favourite albums, but in 1982, Mad World, Tears for Fears, from The Hurting, but you haven't chosen the version that appears on that album. You've chosen a version that was released 20 years after the original by Gary Jules. He actually was asked to write a song for the film Donnie Darko.
I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. to tell you, I find it hard to take. The people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world.
Tell us why you've chosen that.
Oh, it's such a beautiful rendition of this song, I think. I mean, I just love the gentleness and the piano. Look, I heard it first, and you'll laugh because I know it's been around for a long time, but I really only heard it in COVID that I remember. And it really struck me with the lyrics, a mad world, no tomorrow, going nowhere, people dying. And that was such an intense time for the world, and I feel like we all went a bit mad. I really feel like we lived in this madness. The world went mad for some years. And I remember hearing this song. We were in lockdown and we had moved to the South Coast, long story short, and I didn't have a piano, and my beloved went out and bought me a little keyboard, and I was desperate to play songs, and I downloaded this particular song, because the Gary Jules had the piano version of it. So I started to play it, and it was so mesmerizing, and it's quite an easy song to play and a gentle song. And then we were in the middle of COVID, and we were obsessed with the numbers and the deaths and watching these images, and the world was shut down. And we had 2 boys that lived overseas, and we couldn't get to them, and we were distressed. I mean, you ask anyone, everyone has COVID stories, don't they, Nigel?
Oh, gosh. I mean, yeah. Don't get me started. The government tried to stop me going to my mother's funeral. I mean, yeah. So.
Exactly, Nigel. And this is my, we were all a bit mad. And in the middle of this time, I was learning this song, we had terrible news that our first grandchild, a little girl, was born too early and she didn't live. And we couldn't get there. Her name was Enna. It means beautiful bloom. And it was this terrible period where our son and beautiful daughter-in-law were in deep grief and shock, and we couldn't travel. And every day I would call the government, the Japanese government and the Australian government, to try and get permission to be with them. And they wanted 23 documents to permit me to travel, and I couldn't get them. I could not gather these documents. So we were not able to be together. And I think we all went a bit mad.
Oh, that's heartbreaking, Felicity. I think with a 20-year perspective, people are going to look back and they're going to listen to that story and stories like it and say, well, actually, that wasn't helping anyone's health. That wasn't, COVID wouldn't have been worse if you could have been with your grieving child. If you'd flown over there, you'd have had tests and you'd have worn masks and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, I vaccinated 4 times, 50, clear tests, wanted to leave the country and promised I wouldn't come back until COVID was over to be at my mother's funeral. Luckily, I did get the 36 documents and blah, blah, blah. But, it was sort of, yeah, I absolutely agree. I think the world lost its collective marbles, and maybe there is an upside in that when something, which undoubtedly will, happens like that again, we will have a more measured, nuanced and more effective response to it. I remember I live on a beach in Sydney and they put railings up and there was a single surfer, a 17-year-old surfer surrounded by a kilometre of empty ocean. And there was helicopters and police, and you go, really? As you say, mad world. I don't think that bloke out there surfing by himself. You see people in cars by themselves wearing a mask. And you go, I don't know who you think you're going to give it to.
I don't think we'd allow that to happen again. I mean, I understand that the governments and the whole world was scrambling. We were fearful. People were dying. It was a terrible time. And for those of you listening to this, I'm sure it's triggering. All of us are still scarred by COVID.
It's not a simple issue, but I feel, with the benefit of hindsight, some of the behaviour and rules were, let's agree, suboptimal. Do you know where the song name comes from and the band name comes from?
I do not, because I'm not a fan of the original song, Nigel. I know you are.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love your version. I love the original, but there's a US psychologist called Arthur Janoff who wrote the book The Primal Scream.
Ah, yes.
So in this job, I research people's books and films and songs, etc. And I know them from 1982. I was young, love, student, all those things, and just as a pop duo. But they were really, really thoughtful people, and I went down a YouTube rabbit hole in your honour, researching your version and the band, and Roland and Kurt, who are Tears for Fears, were interviewed about Gary Jules's version.
True.
And you can go on.
I will.
You can go on YouTube, and do you know what they say? It's better than ours.
Aha! See, I told you, Nigel.
Amazing. They go. It's.
Oh.
They think. So the quote is, they think it's truer to the lyrics than our version. The emotion of the lyrics. So what they did. So they're talking. It's dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had, etc., etc. It's quite, a dark song. But they were an electro pop duo. So they've got these lyrics set to a sort of a jaunty. Music, whereas dear old Gary comes along and puts more appropriate music to the lyrics. So again, thank you again, whether it's your book or it's your song. I'm learning from you, Felicity.
Yes, marvellous. Yeah, well, just to finish that, what's really nice is that we had a beautiful little ceremony for Enna, for our little granddaughter that we never met, and I played that song. And also when we finally got our son and daughter-in-law to Australia, she learnt that song, and so she plays it. So it's become quite in some ways, quite a healing symbol of our little Enna and of that time. But there's a great beauty, I think, in that song that's kind of lovely.
They have gone on to have another child?
Yes, they have gone on to have 2 more delightful children. So we are blessed. We are healing.
Your fourth choice, Always the Place. And on 5 My Life, people, I've had someone say in the middle of a sentence that I'm writing. I've had Lane Beachley say the ocean. I've had people saying, number 33, Arcasia Crescent. And you've just said the airport. So justify yourself, Copeland. Tell me why you have chosen that.
All right, Mr. Marsh. Well, it's sort of a continuation of the story we've just been talking about is that, especially since COVID, but just generally, I mean, to me, airports are exciting. They represent movement, opportunity, adventure. People are a bit stressed at the airport, aren't they? Like, I love watching them. They're sort of scurrying and they're checking things, and they've got badly behaved children and they're late, and they've, and I think, where are you going? What have you got in that suitcase? And I particularly love international arrivals. And, I'll tell you a story that I think everyone will resonate with you. It was just the international borders had finally opened with COVID, and we were finally able to get our son and daughter-in-law out with their beautiful 8-month-old baby who we'd never met, a little boy called Sonny. And we were just beside ourselves with excitement. And we got to the airport about 6 hours early, and there were hundreds of other families waiting for the same reason. And we got chatting to everyone, and people were, hadn't seen new babies, hadn't seen, people forever and families. And the woman next to me said, look, if your family comes out first, I'll film. And if my family comes out, I'll film your reunion. And it was such a blur when we finally saw Max and Sayori and the baby come down that long walk. I don't know what happened, but someone filmed it. And I have this extraordinary bit of footage of me and Pete and Tom running up to embrace and grab this baby and just weep. And all around us, this was happening. So it was this beautiful collective feeling of love and joy and reunion and, energy, I suppose, and reconnection. And I travel a lot for work, and there's always a certain level of anxiety when I'm traveling. Like, have I got the right equipment, and am I going to deliver the mission properly? Is it going to go well? Am I going to get sick? Because we go to some fairly, low resource settings. So to me, airports are vibrant places, and they were such sad places, weren't they? During COVID, they were all shut down like ghost towns.
Yeah, when I came back from my mum's funeral, I was met by by the army. I flew on a plane. I mean, I
so
tell you, Felicity.
important?
Well, no, gosh, if only. So I was on a plane. I took pictures and videos of it because I was on a huge, whatever it was, 737, and there was 6 people on the plane, but only 1 in economy, and that was me.
That was you.
So one, right? Because they really were being wet. So one person in economy, so all these rows and rows of empty seats. And we arrive, met by the army, driven to a hotel and locked up for 2 weeks. And you think, right? And I was in one of those hotels where, God, I don't know why, it really spooked me. I mean, this is first world problem, so I'm not, complaining too much. But where the windows won't open?
Oh, no.
And you think, God alive, I'm just trapped in this box. And you couldn't go into the corridor. I just think, what is going on?
Wonder room service didn't come in.
But no, God alive. But back to airports. That story you were telling me, making me, imagining you meeting your grandkid, it is when you, just the purity of emotion when everything else is stripped away. It's not some stupid LinkedIn, Instagram post. It's not some, you are bursting with love. To see the little baby. I was just, and sometimes I'm not sure kids, probably they definitely can't. They can't understand the love the parents have. You go. There are times when, if one of my kids is going through a bad time, I will pray to a God I don't believe in, saying, "Pick me, pick me. I will have the illness, the loneliness, the heart, whatever it is. Give it to me, and that will be fine. I just don't want him or her to have it." So, oh gosh, you're making me emotional thinking about airports. I quite like getting to them early. So if you're lucky enough, so you've got to go off to Fiji or somewhere. If you have to get to the airport at 2, you go, I tell you what, I'm going to get there at midday instead. So I'll be the one non-stressed person and just watch and have a cup of coffee. And I love it.
No, definitely. It's a great energy. I love airports.
Your possession. You've actually, you're messing with my format, Felicity, because you've chosen 2 quilts made for you by your special friends. This needs an explanation.
Does it? Okay. Well, I love quilts. I love fabrics, and quilting represents so much time and energy and love and precision and skill that I do not have. And yet I did start quilting many, many years ago. I'm a terrible quilter, but I love it. I love that whole experience of creating something and choosing the colours and sitting down for ages and sewing it. But I have one really specific rule about quilting, and that is you never ever unpick. And it's a little bit troubling for my quilting friends because as I said, I'm a terrible quilter. In fact, someone said to me once when I was quilting beside them, they said, "Oh, look at you. That's great. You're doing a bit of tacking stitch first before you put your quilting stitch in." I said, no, that is my quilting stitch. So that is the level of my quilting, but I do love it. And so when people gave me their quilts, it was such a gift because I knew how much time and effort went into these quilts. And I look at them and I stroke them and I put them out on the back of the couch and I just associate really good feelings with these quilts. One of my golden rules, never unpicking. I was making a quilt for a friend of mine with a baby, and very sadly, I was at the birth and we knew that the baby was actually very unwell and the baby did not live. And we actually knew that before we went into the birth. And it was a really sad time for that family and that woman and for me as their midwife and friend. And I went home that night late and I thought, well, I'm still going to make this baby a quilt because this baby needs a quilt. And I was sitting in bed and I was having a weep and just sort of processing it all and quilting away. And about 2 a.m. I decided to stop and I realized I'd quilted onto my pajamas and that the quilt was stuck into my pajama leg. And I thought, no, I'm not breaking my rule. I'm not unpicking. So I had to work out how to get the quilt off my pajamas without unpicking. So I just cut a hole in the pajamas. And so when I gave this family the quilt about 6 weeks later, I said, there's a little bit of my pajamas on this quilt, to symbolize my love for you, but also my belief that you never should unpick. So that I have a hole in my pajamas and a quilt with a bit of flannelette pajamas on it.
I just love that story where I've got a artist friend who's a sculptor who says the best sculptures are when the material fights back. You want to chip out something out of a granite block, but you actually can't because the material won't let you, and you have to work around that. And that makes the sculpture even better. And there's something where I'm on a 10-year long journey to try and teach myself how to draw, and I've got a similar. It's not a rule, but a similar sort of vision where you go, the mistakes are part of the drawing. So I draw in pencil, but you go, but that one line was wrong, but okay.
You're not rubbing it out. There you go.
That's right. Work around it, and it makes, you can take a bloody photograph if you want. You could go and buy a quilt, from Kmart, but it wouldn't be the loving quilt that you've made that's got a bit of your pajama leg in it. I think that's, and then there's something, there's a phrase, what is it? Wood chopped is twice as warm, i.e. if you've had to go out and saw the log in half, you enjoy the warmth more. Just the love and attention, that you put in. But you need to tell me, before I get on to your sixth choice, who are the two special friends?
Oh, my lovely friend Sally, who's a midwife, and a lovely elderly couple who actually wove they had yarn, and they dyed the yarn with leaves from their property, and they made it into a beautiful quilt. And I had looked after their grandchildren in a bit of a sad circumstances, and I think it was just a gift to thank me. And I really, it is very, very special. And I often think about, people say, what would you grab? And you'd grab your computer, wouldn't you, if a fire was raging and because that's got all your photos on it. But I think I'd grab my quilts. That's
such a lovely Five My Life story. That's just gorgeous. But it's called Five My Life, but there are 6 choices. And the 6 is, who would you like to hear on Five My Life next, and why?
Well, I did run it by my friend last night. I have a lovely friend called Vanessa. I think you know this, Nigel. And she is an absolute amazing woman for her resilience and her love of life, and in the face of some challenging times. And she's madly intelligent, very funny, my fashion guru, and I love her. And I would love to listen to you speak with her, because she's got such a wide range of life experiences, and she's, madly intelligent, and she makes me laugh. So there you go.
What a beautiful, beautiful recommendation. Felicity Copeland, you are an angel. We are lucky to have you. The profession is lucky to have you. And I am personally really grateful that you have come on to Five of My Life and taken the format so seriously and shared so openly and vulnerably. So thank you. Travel well, and give my love to those children and that partner.
Thank you, Nigel Marsh. It's been an absolute joy.
Thank you for listening to the show, and thank you for all your messages with guest suggestions and feedback on the episodes. The Five of My Life audience really is a lovely, engaged community. Please do keep the messages coming in. The best way is through my website. And if you have a friend who you feel might enjoy a particular guest, please do forward the episode on. I do the show on my own, so without a marketing budget, word of mouth really is the only way of people discovering the show.